Okay, guys, we have a special episode of the Impetus Health Podcast today. I'm your host, Dr. Sean Hiller, and we have the myth, the legend in the building, Miss Geena Pitts. Hello, Geena. How are you doing?
Hey, Sean, I'm good. How are you?
I'm so happy you're here. I've been looking forward to this for a while because Geena has a huge background in, if you just say the word fitness, you can think of Geena. She's got a massive background in all of it. She is one of our nutritionists. She is literally you can ask Geena anything about nutrition, she's going to have a great answer for you. And we're going to do a lot of that today. So
Yeah, I heard I'm getting rapid fired at.
you're going to get rapid fired at. And it's going to be a lot of stuff. I looked up some fad diets before you came in, and I have a list of them. And I literally just Google gave me the top 10 listed fad diets. And there's some interesting ones. There's one like a werewolf diet. So we're gonna Geena's not gonna know all these. We're gonna ask her about them. But really, what I want to do in this podcast is I want to get an idea of who Geena is from a strength conditioning and fitness perspective. So talk about her background, talk about how she got into fitness in general, and how she got into nutrition and looking into nutrition in a very deep way. So Geena, if you could give us like a 3-minute summary as to your strength conditioning journey, your fitness journey, and then we can kind of expand off of that.
Yeah, 3 minutes. I'm glad you gave me a cap there.
3 minutes. Timing now.
So I started off, I've never been the most athletic, just honestly. But in the South, what I've realized also, I'm from Michigan. I'm just starting that out. We do not take sports as seriously as people in the South do. So, parents don't put their kids in private lessons and spend all this money on these individualized coaching sessions. So, if you play a sport, you just go to practice and you're done. So, I didn't really have parents, love my parents, no one did this, that really pushed me to excel at a sport. So, if I played soccer, it was just like you went to practice for 30 minutes and then that was all you did. So, I was never great at a sport. I played soccer, I played volleyball, I played basketball. And if I tried to shoot a basket right now, it would be embarrassing. So never was really great at anything, but liked to be active. Always wanted to be outside. And then I ran cross country and track. And that was primarily where I started to really, I like to push myself to get really uncomfortable. And I always talk about cross country is a very bizarre sport because it's really who can suffer the most. That's all cross country is.
Yeah.
It's not like a football game. Like, that's hard, but it's fun. Cross country is not fun. There's nothing about that sport that's like, I'm really enjoying my third mile of the race.
It is suffering.
It is. And so it was something that I just, in a very weird way, enjoyed. I really like to push myself in a way that I didn't think I could do. And then I would come on the other end saying, that was really hard, but awesome.
Yeah. Let me interject here too and say, so Geena is like the aerobic capacity lady. Like my goodness, Geena's aerobic capacity is incredible. But also, did you make regionals in CrossFit, or how close did you get when you were?
Yeah, so it was back in the day when there was a regional. I know they've kind of canceled that so
2015, 16, 17?
Yes, it was 2015 and 16.
Okay.
I was the first person who didn't get asked. So they took 20 people in your region, and I was 21 2 years in a row. The first year I cried, the second year I laughed. Because I'm like, you can't make this up.
Yeah. So Geena's was really close. I mean, she's right at the regional level here. So you kind of have an idea of how fit she is and her athletic background. But I just want to put that in there at the beginning so people can know. All right. So back to cross country. It's suffering. It's bad. That's what you're doing.
So that's primarily what I did in high school. So all of my youth sports, I danced a little bit, but nothing super serious. When I got to high school, cross country and track were the only sports I did. And actually, my cross-country coach was the person who introduced me to CrossFit. So
cool.
I did not run track my senior year of high school because after cross-country ended, I was immersed in the CrossFit world. So I actually started CrossFit in, I believe, 10th grade. So I was really, really young. But prior to that, I had been going to kickboxing classes and body sculpt. So I'd wake up at 5 a.m. with my mom and go to these body sculpt classes.
I love it.
And then I'd run cross-country after school. So I was never great, but just I like to be active. So anyway, I got into CrossFit, and the skills I learned in cross country of mental fortitude and pushing past the pain that you initially feel, I think are what really helped me in the CrossFit world, because again, I was never the best. I mean, skill wise, it took me 2 years to get a stinking double under.
Mm-hmm.
To walk on my hands was the world's hardest feat. But I would spend like 4 hours a day. Every waking moment outside of school was in the CrossFit gym trying to get better. So
Because you had the capacity, you had the work capacity, not only aerobically, but really from a muscular endurance standpoint too. But you just didn't have the skill level, and you started working on the skills a ton. And I want to preface this, like, you are like, I asked Geena last night, Geena, how many push-ups do you think you could do unbroken? And she just kind of off the cuff said, well, I've done 100 before and I stopped. Like, 100 unbroken push-ups before? What? That's wild. And then we asked her your Murph time, and she did Murph. You only done Murph once, right? Like, I know you did it twice that same day, but you did it only one time. One time she's done Murph. She wore a men's weight vest, which is 20 pounds. The women's vest is 14 pounds.
Yeah.
Did it in 36 minutes. That is blazing. And then she rested 10 minutes and did it again strict after that. So painting another picture here. So, well, let's dive into some of that. So let's go back to when the first type of athletic feat that you got into. What was that?
The first thing I ever did was dance.
Okay.
Yeah,
how
you
old
wouldn't
were
know
you?
that now. I believe I started dance probably kindergarten, first grade, and I danced. I mean, I actually was competitive, so I danced until 6th grade.
Okay.
And then I remember my dad said, "Do you really like to do this?" Because he was all about pinching a penny. So, and dance is expensive.
Yeah, it is.
And I thought, I don't think I like this anymore. So then I switched to just doing normal sports. But I was pretty competitive from, I would say, 1st grade until about 6th grade.
So you're in all the nutcrackers. You're doing all of that.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't a gymnast, but I was doing tap and ballet and jazz, all of the normal, I guess traditional dance classes that you could take.
Okay, so 6th grade, you stopped that, and then you start going into playing other sports, like you said. What were those sports that you played when you were in 6th grade?
Yep, I played basketball, which makes me laugh, volleyball, track, and cross country. So I did all of those.
That's great.
Yeah, it was fun.
What was the first one that you took seriously?
Cross country, because it was the first one I was good at.
I bet you were just naturally good at it too.
It took some time to learn. When you're in elementary school, you don't ever have to run distance. Not that I can recall. Mm-hmm. So when you're in gym class, you're just sprinting down everything's a sprint.
Yeah.
So when I remember my first cross country practice, I took off like blazing. It was a 2-mile run, and I took off. I'm like, these people are so slow. And about a half a mile in, I am on the curb. And luckily there was one boy, he was a family friend, but he just like waited and rested with me. And I was like, I'm not coming back. But once you got the hang of it, it was definitely more natural for me because, again, it was something I was just playing off of what I already had. I feel like just naturally I'm going to be a more aerobic kind of person. Yes.
Yeah.
And so that was just playing off my strength.
It reminds me of Ellie the first time that she ran. I think it was a 5K. Zane, her dad, grabbed her and said, "Hey, we're going to go run this 5K." And Ellie's in 8th or 9th. I think she's in 8th grade. And they go into a 5K. She's never done it before, ever. And Ellie's aerobic capacity is incredible. You guys kind of go at it, and yours is amazing. But she got out there with a pair of basketball shoes, had no idea what she was doing, and she started sprinting. And Zane's like trying to keep up with her, and he's like, "Baby, slow down! Like you're gonna die. You're gonna give out." And she just never gave out. I think she ran like an 18 and a half minute 5K or something like that in 8th grade.
Insane.
Her first time ever doing it, which is awesome. So. At your cross country level, so you start taking that seriously. Did you phase out the other sports, or did you keep doing? Okay, so you went straight cross country for a while. When did that start?
So I pretty much just did cross country and track starting in 9th grade. So 6th, 7th, and 8th, it was basketball and volleyball. Mm-hmm. Basketball slowly faded out, then volleyball, and then it was just running. But I wasn't good at those. Like, I'll tell you this, I don't want to embarrass myself really with a lot of things. So if I know I'm not going to be good at something, the fear of looking like a fool will stop me from even trying, which is so in volleyball, if I saw a ball, I was not going to die for it. Cause what if I missed it or it went somewhere else and then I'm embarrassed. So I would just watch it. And like, I remember I watched about like, they would serve it to me cause I was too scared to do anything. So it was one of those things where I wasn't good at it because I was scared, and I may have been really good at it had I attempted, but I was just, the fear of looking foolish kept me from even trying.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
What is your Enneagram?
A 3.
Wow. That makes so much sense. I'm a 3-2. Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't want to look like an idiot in front of people.
Yeah.
And you were frozen up. That's wild to me.
Would literally just freeze. Yeah.
So you get into cross country and you realize I'm good at this. I can impress people with this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that rings such a bell.
Yeah. I thought I'm good at this. I was never the best though. I mean, I was never just cross country runners like predominantly are just super, super tiny. I'm not, I don't look like a cross country runner really necessarily. And we had some really, really good girls who were a little bit younger than I was who just they were running 17-minute 5Ks. And so they were breaking records. So I'm a 20-minute or, not anything great. And then ran into some health issues and really my iron got very, very low. Didn't know proper nutrition. And I couldn't even run a mile.
Wow.
In 10th and 11th grade, I had to drop out of every race because I was just so tired. And then finally, once I realized what was going on, everything turned around after that.
Is that how you started looking at nutrition? Because of the iron? Or
yeah, my nutrition background is so strange, John. It really is.
What you got? What's your background with it?
So just back in the 3rd grade.
Let's go way back.
It's way back. One of my really good friends, his mom was a dietitian, and it always intrigued me. So my parents were always overweight. My mom isn't now. She lost a bunch of weight and she runs and she's super active. But
great, yeah.
We just ate fast food. We would eat fast food every day after school. We'd go to Burger King. And I was never overweight because I was so active, but didn't know nothing about nutrition. So my friend's mom, she would make me a smoothie and talk to me about what was in it. And it was always so intriguing to me.
Yeah.
But I remember one time she told me I looked really muscular. And at the time, when you're young, you don't really know. I was like, I think she means I'm fat. So I told my mom, I'm never eating fast food again. And this is where some disordered mindset and thinking came in. I said, I'm never eating fast food again. I'm not eating these little Debbie brownies you put in my lunch. I'm not doing any of that. And
you thought your friend's mom called you fat.
Yeah.
And she said you were muscular.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I would lock myself in my room and do 1,000 crunches. I had a dresser that the bottom of it, literally my feet could fit underneath. And I would do 1,000 every day. And I got a video called Fit Kids by Denise Austin. And I would do my Fit Kids video twice back to back. And I would take it on me with vacation. I would pack my Fit Kids DVD.
So she put a fear in you almost at that time.
Oh, no doubt.
And that's your 3 coming out is you don't want to look like that in front of people.
Yeah.
Wow. That's wild. Okay.
Yeah. So it's just crazy how things can go back that far. And then obviously people know fast food is not the healthiest, but when you got into the more nitty gritty of things, I didn't know any nutrition. I didn't know what protein was and how much I was supposed to eat. My parents didn't know. So I really didn't have any understanding of what actually fueled me for running. And so I was living off of trail mix and yogurt.
And this is when you're running cross country.
Yeah, this is in high school.
Yeah.
We would just go to a friend's house. We had off-campus lunch so we could leave. We would just go to the nearest friend's house and eat, just snacky foods. And so I wouldn't eat breakfast because in high school you just wake up 5 minutes before you have to be there. So I wasn't eating breakfast. I'd eat, maybe I'd eat a piece of fruit, and then I loved raisins. So maybe I'd eat raisins and yogurt. And that's all I would eat until dinner. And so I just had gotten so sick because I was not giving my body what it needed. And at that time, I wasn't super thinking oh, I shouldn't be eating because I'm fat. I just didn't know.
You just didn't know. Yeah. And so you're eating like this and you're practicing cross country every day and you're doing what's the typical cross country distance? What are some of the distances that you would run?
We had a really good coach. So I think it depends on your coach, but we did a lot of cross training too, which was very helpful. Typically there'd be one long run a week and he had us categorized by how good you were essentially. So the longest group would go anywhere from 8 to 10 miles. And I would do that. If he told me to do the middle group, which was 6 to 8, I would do the longest one. I was not going to let somebody do more than me. So I would, even if I couldn't run as fast as they would, I would just take longer. Cause I'm telling you, there were 3 girls that were like lightning.
Yeah.
So there would be the 10 miler group, the 6 to 8 mile group. And then some people's long run would be 4 to 6. It just depended how long you had been there for and how fast you were.
Okay. All right. So sounds like he's a good coach, but he never talked to you guys about nutrition.
He was the first person who started.
He was.
Yes,
good. Okay.
Yeah. So he was the first person. Pasta parties and carb loading was the thing that all cross country teams did the night before a race. Well, he started saying, yes, it's important to have carbs, but like no one's eating protein. So he was the first person to be like, we're having protein parties is what he would call them. Yeah. So he was kind of the person, he was the one who introduced me to CrossFit and kind of gave me somewhat of a framework of knowing how to fuel my body better for my sport.
Yeah. Well, I think, for other sports too, like guys, typically we're known for just eating a bunch of junk. Like I'm playing basketball, I just ate a bunch of junk, went and played. Like we can get away with that. But, and like girls too, like even, girls tend to have more disorders than guys do just initially, but girls, if they're into dance, if they're into cheer, if they're into some of these other sports, you don't notice the malnutrition as much because the nature of the sport. The sport's shorter, you're doing more powerful movements, so you can kind of get away with trash nutrition. But with an aerobic and endurance sport like cross country, that will expose you more than anything else because you if you eat trash or if you honestly with you just weren't eating. So if you don't have any fuel in you, you're going to run into that wall unlike you will in any other sport. So it sounds like you kind of got exposed with cross country a little bit. And then you had this good coach who was coming along and saying, okay, we need to do something. So whenever you started having some of those health issues and some of that, was he talking to you during all that? Was he saying we need to do, what was he saying?
Yeah, I was having like physical with the low iron symptoms of not eating enough, but also I had a stress fracture in my leg. So I was having just the typical symptoms of
just getting hurt.
Yes, getting hurt, bones are brittle, lost a ton of my hair.
Man,
all I would want was to eat ice, which is another symptom of having low iron. And so, yes, he was the one who was, really trying to enforce better habits in terms of like, you need to eat breakfast. You can't just wake up and go to school, and giving us examples of things we should eat. So he would not just talk to me personally. He would sit us down. Even preseason, he was really good about going through what his expectations were for the season, what we needed to be doing on our own, what he expected at practice, what he expected our nutrition to look like. So he was awesome. I mean, I still talk to him to this day because he really was one of the main people who really formed my mindset in terms of nutrition and health and fitness and all of those things. So I'm so thankful for him because
That's awesome.
He was the catalyst of, I really feel like, to where I'm at now.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So when you were going through all that, and he's talking with you, you have your dietitian or your friend's mom's a dietitian. Were you talking with her at all?
Not really.
Kind of phased out.
Yeah, because he was an elementary school friend.
Okay, yeah. So during all that, how did you start looking into nutrition yourself too while he's talking to you? So on the backside of this sickness, I guess going into your senior year, I guess you were able to run again your senior year. How did you approach nutrition differently your senior year versus before you started having those issues?
Yeah, well, I also started getting into the CrossFit scene at this point.
Yep.
So that, and I know how CrossFit has done things has definitely transpired this is 2013. So it was all if it fits your macros. That was like
and paleo.
Name. Yep, paleo. There was one other thing. I think my gym just called it Project Phoenix. So I was doing these like little things at my gym where they would host a specific nutrition challenge and you could sign up for it. So I was getting exposure to different nutrition, strategies back in my senior year of high school through my CrossFit gym. So one of them was paleo. We did like a 30-day paleo challenge, and that was fun for a little while. And then it was, okay, now you need to be eating Rice Krispie treats during the middle of your workout to give you, glucose so you can. So that was totally, I'm like, I need to eat Rice Krispie treats. That was forbidden. And so it's like the pendulum was just the complete other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But after those kind of faded out and I graduated from high school, I hired my own coach. So I actually reached out to someone. Her name was Alyssa Ritchie. She was an Olympic lifter who had a CrossFit background. And she was the first person who wrote me like a specific meal plan, what I needed to eat, when I needed to eat it, gave me some options. And that's when I started to meal prep and got really into Sean knows I take my lunchbox. Literally, he said, it wouldn't be a trip if you didn't bring your lunchbox.
And it's a giant lunchbox. Yeah. How tall are you? 5 feet tall, 5'1" maybe?
I'm 5'3".
You're not 5'3" because Ellie's 5'1" and y'all are.
I'm like maybe 5'2".
I
was 5'3" once.
5'2" is generous, people, but Geena's lunchbox is got to be 3 feet tall. Like it's like half of her. So, and you won't see Geena without this purple lunchbox. So it's everywhere she goes. Yeah.
So I started the meal prep scene then.
Yeah.
And it's of course evolved over what I have done has changed. I mean, when I first started CrossFit, it was more recreational. I was there for the social aspect. Of course, I liked the workouts, but I wasn't serious. And then I got very competitive, and that's when I knew exactly what I had to eat at what time, and everything was prepped on Sunday, every breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because when I left my house at 3 a.m., I was not coming home till 8 p.m., so I had to pack up everything for the entire day.
Because you were coaching. You were coaching, right?
Yep, I was training from like 4 a.m. until 7 a.m., then I'd go to class for 8 a.m., and my gym was 45 minutes away, and then school was 45 minutes from my gym, and then 45 minutes back home. So I had this massive commute. It was a triangle, 45 minutes every stretch.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to train for 3 hours, go to class for 4 hours. I had an internship, so I'd go there, I'd go back to class, and then I was coaching at my school at night. So I was doing boot camp classes, personal training, just odds and ends classes like that. And I'd get home at 8, and I'd go right to bed.
And if I know you, I'm betting you had it down to the gram.
Oh,
like
yeah.
Everything that went into your body, you knew the grams, you knew exactly the calorie that you were going to hit at the end of the day. And I bet if you were a few calories short, you would try to get something in to hit that on the head.
Yeah. Like if my oatmeal was 51 grams, I would take out a couple grains of oatmeal to get it to 50 grams to the dot.
Yeah. And just knowing you, I call Ellie a busy bee. You're a busy bee. You definitely are. Bee. So those long days, I bet you love that. Like you were getting up at 4, you were working did you ever just crash?
Oh, the weekends I'd crash hard. I would. I mean, that's very early. I like to be busy, but I also like to be home.
Yeah.
So to be gone for that long was tough. And so my weekends were really spent studying and getting ready for the next week.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Do you feel like when you were competing heavily that you were appropriately fueled? Do you feel like you were fueling right? Or if you could go back and change anything, what would you change?
If I could go back, I would probably eat more. I mean, so yes, my aerobic capacity was good, but my strength was horrendous. And to give more perspective, the reason I did not make regionals was not because I was just kind of average across, like not average, but it's not like my scores were 30, 31, 35. It was like 2, 2, 3, 800, 2. And that's not a lie. Like not vaguely, I distinctly remember all of my placements being top 20, and then I had an 800th place. That was strength.
Yep.
And so if I could go back, I would nutritionally change my portions to have more carbs. I just think that I was still a little bit hyper-focused on the aesthetic component of it, and I feel like if you're going to be a competitive CrossFitter, the aesthetics follow the performance. And I was more concerned about the way I looked at some points in time than I was on the performance side of things.
Yeah.
And I would also change the way I trained. I mean, I overtrained for sure.
Yeah, and
no question.
And you learn as you go. Like you have a master's in exercise science. You've delved into some serious physiology. During all this, I guess you were kind of, because at the time you were in school for exercise science. When did you really start going for the nutrition aspect? Because they give you some of that exercise science, but you have had to self-teach yourself a lot of this. So how did you approach that? And then, I guess kind of take it from there.
Well, I love the exercise piece. I really do. But I like education. And yes, there can be some education with working out and training, but for the most part, people just want to be told what to do, I understand that. I mean, I have my master's degree and I still want someone to write my programming. I get it. To do it for yourself is a different beast. And no one really wants to know the science behind it. Just really. But with nutrition, you need to know. You need to be educated with the decisions you're making. You can't just be like, eat this for meal 1, eat this for meal 2, eat this for meal 3, because at some point you're going to go out to eat and you can't follow the meal plan. So you need to know why you're eating those things, what they're doing for your body, and also so you can tweak those things if you need to make an adjustment. You're not just a robot that has the same calorie expenditure every single day.
Exactly.
So you need to know if you are more, active one day, what do you need to refuel your body with? And so for me, there was more, if I could go back, I would definitely teach, but I didn't really have that opportunity. I did, but I don't like driving. So I did not want to drive across the Bayway 45 minutes every day. So I love to teach, and nutrition was really that outlet for me because I felt like it was so undervalued really with the majority of people. And there's also so much confusion around it. So for me, it was, how can I educate people to simplify this so they can apply it to their life without being bogged down with what the market says right now or what's the newest trend going on, but what works for you.
Yeah, I love that. And that kind of segues me into, you're just a wealth of knowledge in nutrition. So I want to ask you a lot of these questions. So I'm gonna throw some things at you.
Okay.
We're gonna get to the fad list in a second because I think it's actually gonna be very insightful because a lot of these diets you're not gonna know what they are. I'm gonna have to tell you what Google tells me they are.
Yeah.
But I would love to get your response on some of this. But before we get there, so I want to go in. You've worked with a ton of clients.
Mm-hmm.
What is the most common thing that you see that needs to change in someone's diet?
Consistency across the week. So I would say for the most part, people have a pretty good understanding of foods that are healthy and unhealthy. I mean, if you show people 2 plates, I think they could pick out which one was more healthy versus the other one.
Yeah.
But what happens is they segment their week, and not even intentionally, really, but Monday through Thursday or Friday are, the work week. You're on track with your plan. And then sometimes Friday is lumped into the weekend, but for sure Saturday and Sunday, it's like you completely don't follow the Monday through Friday plan. And so it seems like, it's just 2 days. I was really consistent with Monday through Friday. But the extent people overdo the weekend almost negates everything they've done through the week.
Wow. So you're seeing that large of a
100%,
discrepancy.
100%, yes.
Man.
Because and a lot of it comes back to your routine. On Monday through Friday, you wake up at the same time. You have you know exactly what you're doing, right? You have to go to work. Your lunch break's the same time. You come home. You have dinner. You know when your workout is. Saturday and Sunday, I get it. You want to sleep in. You don't want a routine. You want to relax. But that throws everything else off.
Yeah.
And so you might wake up a little bit later. So then breakfast ends up being, brunch, right? You don't have a true breakfast, but you have a massive brunch. And maybe you have, a big glass of orange juice and have a couple cinnamon rolls and then a big thing of eggs. And then you don't eat all afternoon and go out to eat that night.
Yeah.
And you have a pasta dish with some bread as an appetizer. And then you have a dessert and a couple of drinks. And it just escalates. And people do not realize that. And I'm not saying don't go out to eat. And I'm not trying to ruin people's parties. But going out to eat can be the biggest damper on progress when you do it 3 times a week.
Yeah. And you and Ellie have talked about this, but I definitely think that we self-medicate with food. And I think a lot of us, like now, the time that we're living in is the most stressful time really in human history. It's how efficient we all have to be. So we hit the weekend and then I'm going, I've been stressed out all week. Let me grab some food and just feel good for a while. And I can see how that could, all of a sudden you can get an extra 1,500 calories in, plus you're putting junk into your body like alcohol that's going to ruin everything. Yeah. So I can see that. I'm kind of interested by the answer, the consistency. I thought you were going to say people don't know what protein is or something like that. So it's really consistency.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So let me ask you this to kind of follow up on that. If someone came to you and so when someone comes to you for nutrition, what's the thing that they're always asking for? Okay, I want this. Is it aesthetics? Is it, I want to be a healthy lifestyle? What are they asking for?
I feel like there's 2 main camps. One is definitely weight loss. I would say that's a big majority of people. They want weight loss. And then the other camp, I think, is energy. A lot of people come.
Interesting. Yeah.
In the afternoon, it's 2 p.m. and they need a pick me up. They need the coffee. They're tired. They want a nap. And it's, how do I have sustained energy throughout the day? Because most people are still working full time and they can't take a nap at 2 p.m., right? So they're like, why am I having this midday crash? Why do I feel like garbage after lunch? And so coming up with ways to help them with that. I would say number 1 is definitely weight loss, just in the society we live. But the second thing is also energy levels throughout the day.
Yeah, I think that's big. How coupled do you think are working out and nutrition?
Oh, entirely coupled. And I go back and Ellie and I have talked about this before. It's like, if you were to tell one person what to start with, either exercise or nutrition, what would you choose? And I go back and forth all the time. I really do.
I have an answer for that. This is my opinion on it because I've thought about this too. I think nutrition is more important, but I think working out is the catalyst for good nutrition. So I would tell someone to work out because I think if you do it, then nutrition is going to follow. Whereas for myself personally, I can't just eat well without working out because working out tells me why I need to eat well, essentially. So I didn't, even with myself, like when I first started looking at nutrition. I had zero clue about nutrition until Ellie came into my life.
Yeah.
And she saw what I was eating, and she's like, "No, we need to change this up. Especially if I'm going to marry you, we need to change this up." But all of my stuff, I wanted the aesthetics. I wanted aesthetics from it. So I started working out really hard, and I realized, man, I'm eating trash, and I feel terrible. Now, all of a sudden, the only thing I've changed is what I'm putting into my body. My nutrition's changed. I'm working out the same, but I feel so much fitter. I feel so much better. So for me, working out's always the catalyst for not only for nutrition, but organization everywhere in life.
Yeah.
It helps.
Yeah. I think my final answer is also working out.
Okay.
and it's similar, but it's because we are such a people of instant gratification.
Oh man. Yeah.
And with nutrition, the weight loss process it's not instant, and it's not even linear, which is really hard for people to understand and grasp. But with working out, I can guarantee after you work out the first time, you will leave, if you do a good workout in terms of like, it's not just this random hodgepodge of exercises or way too hard for where you're starting at, like a good first workout for your ability level, you will leave feeling better. You will leave instantly more energized. And I'm not saying your body weight's going to go down at all, because workout is not how you lose weight. Working out is not how you lose weight. But just in terms of how you feel, self-confidence, that improves immediately. It's not like you have to wait 3 weeks for that to happen. And so I would also say working out, because I feel like that kind of gets the ball rolling a little bit faster than nutrition does at times. But obviously nutrition is the piece for weight loss. But just in terms of like, how can we kickstart to like feel better? I would say working out. Absolutely.
And I think it's so cool. Like the nutrition piece has always been so fascinating with me, because I'm an energy systems guy. I love energy systems. So if you look at those systems, you can see how, I mean, anything we eat goes into fueling those systems, from an aerobic side, from anaerobic side, whatever it is. So when you look at it from the performance perspective, we got all these books right here: Power, Speed, Endurance, some like Supple Leopard, like all these are so focused on this physiology book. When you look at the different sports, when you take, okay, I'm an offensive lineman for the University of Alabama. I weigh 320 pounds. Well, your position itself requires a certain aspect of nutrition. I mean, this is definitely on the performance side. We're feeding them like cattle because we need them to perform like that. But then you look at, okay, now I'm Eloise Kipchoge. I'm the fastest runner in the world. How do I fuel myself for this marathon I'm about to run? And that fueling aspect is so cool. Or, I talked to a guy the other day who's a high-end pilot. So like their nutrition flying these fighter pilots is really interesting, just the what it does for our body. But it's not a certain training method. You can have training methods for all those, but really one of the most important pieces is the nutrition piece, because that fuels how you train. Sorry, it's a segue, but all right. So I want to ask you some of these fad diets. I think it's going to put us into some cool wormholes. But so I have Googled. This is my Google, is fad diets, and it has given me a list of a few of them. And I'm not going to lie, these are some interesting diets. Maybe we can find a couple more.
The interesting thing is someone came up with this.
Oh, yeah.
Like, who and why? This is the real question.
These are the top 5 diets that Google pulls up.
Okay.
So the first one. I have the privilege today to tell you about Vulcan Nutrition. It is a branch of our company that they do exactly what's in the name. They handle nutrition. Our phrase for Vulcan Nutrition is enhance what fuels you. It is not a fad diet. It is not some random thing that you're doing that you see someone else do. This is how to appropriately fuel your body based individually off of who you are and how you operate. If you're listening to this podcast with Geena and I right now, Geena is one of our nutritionists for Vulcan Nutrition. You could work with her. She is so intent on the individual. One cookie cutter nutrition regimen does not work for everyone. It has to be adapted for you so that you can use it for the rest of your life. This is not something that you do, for a couple months, you pick up some diet template, you do it for a few months. This is something that you can take the things that you're learning through Vulcan Nutrition and apply them to the remainder of your life so you can live the healthiest possible life as you can and be ready for anything. So if you're interested in learning more about nutrition, our team at Vulcan Nutrition, they do a free discovery call. You can see that on the website. I'll put it in the description. And they'll take a few minutes to just talk to you about what your goals are, what you're trying to do from a nutrition perspective, and what you would like to get out of living a more nutritious lifestyle. And then you can weigh it from there and decide what you want to do. And it's a great way to set a goal. It's a great way to identify what you actually want to do, as well as doing one of these free discovery calls. So check them out. Vulcan Nutrition is the company. They can help you tremendously get your life, put it back in your hands, and help you to choose a better way to live. So yeah, you can continue listening to this podcast. We're going to continue to talk about how important nutrition is. But at the end of the day, what you put inside your body matters, and it's going to set you up for the rest of your life. It's a diet called the werewolf diet. Do you know what a werewolf diet is?
No, I need a little bit of background on that one.
I don't even know if we're going to be able to use this one. So the werewolf diet, also known as the lunar diet and the moon diet, is a fad diet that centers upon users fasting according to the lunar phases. This has prompted people to nickname the diet plan the werewolf diet. As a result, celebrities that have endorsed this diet include Demi Moore and Madonna. The diet is typically performed in one of two fashions: the basic moon plan or the extended version. The first plan is a variation of the juice cleanse, in that individuals are only permitted to drink water, freshly squeezed fruit and vegetable. And then the other one is the extended version, requires the diet to begin with an initial fast, and then following a series of eating plans tailored to the moon's phases. So we're going to... What's your initial response to the werewolf diet?
I'm like, what? The mind blown emoji should be appearing above my head.
That's how I'm feeling too. I mean, you can't base a diet off the moon. It doesn't make any sense. So let me pigeonhole you on some of these things then, as opposed to the moon diet. What do you like? They brought up the juice cleanse. Yeah. So I know you're probably more familiar with a juice cleanse diet or something like that. What is your opinion on a juice cleanse, and could you tell people what that actually is?
Yeah. So I think with juice cleanses, I always have to come back and ask someone why they're doing something. Like, what is the intent behind it? Like, is your goal weight loss? Is your goal to perform better in the gym? What is the reason you're doing this? For a juice cleanse, I would say people who undergo the cleanse are trying to detoxify. You'll probably hear that word a lot.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so, again, your body is smart. We are divinely created. And so our bodies detoxify on their own. So when people specifically do these juice cleanses as protocols to try to detox their bodies and get rid of all these toxins, your body knows how to do that without this weird water, juice, vegetable, fruit combination. And so I think really people think they need to detoxify before they start a diet, but that's just false. Your body detoxifies on its own. You could go right in. If your goal is weight loss, you could just start with essentially a calorie deficit and you would be okay.
Exactly. So like the phrase a detox diet or a detox cleanse, that's a myth.
That's a
false.
Myth. Yes.
Just doing proper nutrition is essentially going to detox.
Yes.
I gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Like when you sweat, you're detoxing.
You're detoxing.
So just go sweat a little bit. Go sit in the sauna.
I love that. So the next one on here is actually quite similar. Have you heard of the Beverly Hills diet? So this is like a huge celebrity diet. This thing, I actually know a few people who have tried to do something like this just because it's what the celebrities are doing. Yeah. But it follows the same thing. They kind of talk a lot about retraining your digestive system with a fruit-based diet for 35 days. So all you're eating is fruit for, I want to say 35 days. And the big thing is you'll lose 10 or 15 pounds after the weight loss idea. So what do you think about just that in general? If someone ate fruit just for a month, what's your initial reaction to that?
I think that they would feel very terrible and their muscle mass would suffer greatly. And I would specifically say if you're trying to train and just eat fruit, you're not receiving any benefits from training, right? You're not eating any protein to help repair your muscles. Yes, fruit is a good pre-workout fuel, right? It's a quick dump of glucose in your blood. That's great for working out. But in terms of muscle recovery, that is not doing anything to help you. So a lot of these diets, and I know, not Ozempic, Optavia.
Yes. Yeah.
Was a really big fad. And not that it's just fruits, but it's so low calorie, which if you just ate fruits, I mean, you could overeat fruits and be in a calorie surplus, but for the most part, that would be very hard to do.
You're still gonna be hungry.
You're gonna be hungry, and these diets that are so low calorie, they have to have a disclaimer that says it is not safe to work out. So with Optavia, you're not allowed to, or they don't recommend working out for the first 2 weeks to a month.
Wow.
Because I think it's 1,200 calories, maybe a little bit less. And I mean, that's less than most people's basal metabolic rate. So you're entering some dangerous territory when you're that severe of a calorie deficit. If you go and then expend more energy, it really isn't safe.
Yeah, yeah. What is your opinion on some of those weight loss drugs? Because I know it may be a little bit more nuanced than what we've thought of before. So what's your opinion on some of those?
Like Ozempic and semaglutide.
You
those
know them a
ones?
lot better than I
Yeah.
do. There may be one that you like and ones you don't like. Just I know it's. I've heard Ellie talk about it a little bit, and it's a little bit more nuanced of an answer than I've thought about.
So at first I would be like, and this is not the right answer. I'd be like, oh, they just don't want to work. They're lazy. I have really, really, really changed my perspective because I'm starting to understand obesity. I understand it's a result of someone's choices. Truly it is.
Yeah.
But there are so many factors that I don't think someone who is continuously overeating is thinking about that while they're eating, right? They're not thinking, oh, this is causing me to gain weight. It really is such a health crisis that these semaglutide drugs, which are appetite suppressants, I find they can be very helpful for someone who is struggling to lose weight because they are going to help them with that journey, but they need the proper education along with it. You can't hand someone a drug and say, take this, you'll be healthy, without giving them, okay, but also you need to make sure that you're getting in enough protein, that you're strength training 3 times a week and you're getting steps in. I mean, you're doing them a disservice if you're handing them a drug and not giving them any lifestyle interventions along with it. So it's one of those things that it does not increase your metabolism. So you cannot take semaglutide and be like, oh, I'm just going to lose weight. It just suppresses your appetite, so then you eat less. Yeah. Is essentially how it works.
So did you think people before doing something like that should exhaust some other methods prior to going on the drug? And I know with this, if you did have a client that were doing it, y'all would probably make a plan to try to get off that at some point and have a more holistic viewpoint.
Yeah.
Is it something that someone could just do, or do they need to try some other things and then fail at those and then go into that?
I would say for certain demographics, they could start with it, to be honest.
Gotcha.
If you are severely overweight and it is truly affecting your quality of life, your blood markers are terrible, your cholesterol is high, and you need to take action now, the process of, making interventions with diet and exercise, it's a slow process. I mean, it really is. And I think for someone like just losing that extra body fat can be very helpful for making those biomarkers better. Yeah. And so, of course, we want to educate them, but step one, the reason that they have such bad health overall is because of the overweight and the fat they're carrying around. Yeah. And so for them to lose some weight is really the top priority.
Just jumpstart.
Yes.
Just get it going.
Yes.
I like that. And I want to ask more about these diets, but I want to ask you about this. I think it's fascinating, the body response, and I can't explain it well, but could you break down what chronic dieting is and break down so a chronic calorie deficit, essentially? Yeah. How does the body respond to that? And then how do you, I'm sure a lot of the people that you're seeing are probably for decades now have been in a chronic caloric deficit. How do you slowly get them out of that? Break that down for people.
I would say people who think they're chronically dieting, this is the thing. When we look, I'm going to go back and get a little, not super sciencey, but the research pretty much shows that people tend to underreport their food intake by, even dietitians, by up to 20 to 30%. And they overestimate their activity
20 to 30%
by about the same. So you have now this person who's coming to you who says, I'm eating blah, 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 and I'm doing this, and this for exercise. So you're like, well, shoot, based on what you told me, you should be losing weight. But they're not accounting for the few bites of tortilla chips they eat throughout the day and the handful of pretzels they eat after dinner and the piece of chocolate they eat after they have dinner. So it's these different calories that add up throughout the day because people can report their meals pretty well, but it's the snacks that they forget, they don't account for. Gotcha. So people who think they're chronically in a calorie deficit but haven't seen weight loss, they are not in a calorie deficit because the true nature of a calorie deficit is that you will be experiencing weight loss. And so if you're not in a calorie deficit. And that's a hard truth for people to hear and understand. But and it's not people lying to us and saying
they just don't know.
They just don't know. They forget. And so it's one of those things, I'm not faulting the person, but that's why going through a period of specifically tracking your food, using an app, writing it down is so invaluable, not to be restrictive, but to actually have awareness of this is what I'm putting in my body. And I didn't even remember that I had this, but I wrote it down. So like looking back at the week, those handfuls of snacks you had throughout the day now equal 1,500 calories.
Gotcha. Yeah. So generally we are in a surplus. Most people are in a surplus.
If you're gaining
or
weight, you're
surplus.
generally in a surplus. I would say the majority of people are right on the brink of maintenance into surplus.
Okay. I'm surprised by that. I was in an interesting category. So when I started working with Ellie several years ago, I was working out a lot. I started working with her, and I was in a caloric deficit big time and didn't realize it. I wasn't eating enough because I wanted to be skinnier. I had love handles. I wanted to shave my love handles off. I couldn't figure out how to do it. And Ellie looked at me and she said, I think you're under eating significantly. And sure enough, she bumped my carbs up a ton. Like it was like, and I'm not so into it that I really care, but she bumped it up enough. It was kind of like, oh shoot, I've got to eat all these carbs now.
Yeah.
And I started eating probably 150 grams more of carbs a day. Ate a ton more protein. I mean, that was a huge thing. Ate a lot more protein. And then I noticed my body comp started to change a ton because I was in a deficit, and I started to put the right fuel into my body. And all of a sudden the love handle started to go away. I was very exact with it, still working out a ton. But that was so interesting to me because she broke down the caloric deficit type thing, which was cool. But I guess I thought that was so much more common than what it is. So generally when you see somebody, it's mainly in a surplus.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say they're mainly in a surplus, underreporting what they're eating. But
Okay.
also when you are under fueling, your workouts suffer. So if you like for you, for example, Sean, your workouts, you probably were able to put in a higher intensity once you were properly fueling. So that changed your body composition.
Yeah.
It wasn't magically eating more carbs made you have a six pack. It was that those carbs fueled your workouts. Now you hit a higher intensity. You're getting way more out of that workout.
Interesting.
And you're seeing that muscle.
Wow. So that's cool. So it really it fueled me to allow to train into that new composition.
Yeah. Which is why when we work with people who have a performance goal or just working out's fun for them, we don't want to put them in a deficit too drastic because then workouts start to suffer, which slow process. And kind of the cool thing we're dabbling with right now is when you are in a calorie deficit, your body does adapt. So metabolic adaptation, it's a real thing. As you lose weight, your metabolism will slow down. Smaller people require less energy, we say, to keep the lights on, right? You're just smaller, so you don't have to expend as much energy for those bodily processes to happen. Well, let's just say I'm going to give an example that my BMR is 2,200. So for me to keep the lights on, which if people don't know, that's literally if you laid in bed all day, that's how many calories you would burn. So not lifting the finger. If I lost 10% of my body weight, my metabolic adaptation to that is going to be roughly 200 calories. So now my BMR is closer to 2,000 per day. So now I'm only burning 2,000 calories per day if I just lay in bed. The drastic part comes in with NEAT. And I know we haven't talked about that yet, but that is really just subconscious movement throughout the day. So like we're talking with our hands, that would be NEAT. If you kind of fidget, that's NEAT. If you're someone who just kind of paces or you're always standing and doing something, that's NEAT.
You're a huge fidgeter.
I just 24/7, I'm doing something. So this can be, I like to kind of categorize it in two ways. Subconscious, like you don't think about fidgeting. It just kind of happens.
Yeah.
But steps are the big thing now that people talk about with NEAT. I'm not trying to get like into the semantics of it. Technically that's not NEAT, right? Because you're planning to go for a walk. That's a conscious decision that you're making. But for our purposes, it's a proxy for NEAT, right?
Yeah.
The more steps you have, typically the more active you are throughout the day. So anyway, when you go into a severe calorie deficit and looking at that person who has now lost 10% of their body weight, NEAT can decrease by up to 600 calories per day. So,
wow, man.
Yes. So now that same person, it's 500 to 600. So now that same person, for easy math, their BMR would be 1,500 per day. So you went from 2,200 from where you started down to 1,500, which is severe, right? That's a very big drop. And so it's one of those things that we want to minimize that as much as possible. So we don't want to take someone from maintenance and drop them down into this severe calorie deficit because now,
state.
because now they're fatigued, they're low energy, they don't want to work out. The motivation to get to the gym is decreased. So we're really increasing the barrier to want to be active, which that's not what we want to do.
Yeah.
So I think Ellie would say the same thing, as we don't want to approach nutrition as this restriction and this is what you have to do, and we have to limit this here and remove this here. We want to think about it as an abundance. So how can we add in more activity?
Yeah.
And that requires more calories. And I think people generally adhere to it better when they have a bigger calorie bank to pull from.
Absolutely.
Hey guys, I want to tell you about the Vulcan Hatch cycle. If you're listening to this podcast right now with Geena and I, then you can tell that a lot of it is about muscle mass. It's about strength. It's just the resiliency of the body to be able to endure whatever is thrown at you. And that is what strength, muscle mass, and this hatch cycle is all about. So the Vulcan hatch cycle is set up so that you can pick 2 movements. We kind of recommend the front squat and the back squat. That's your typical hatch cycle. And you do those movements twice a week in a very formatted way. It's very simple. You get on there and you find your 3-rep heavy or your 3-rep max weight for some of these movements, and you put those numbers in, and the template automatically adjusts to the numbers that you need to try to hit for the remainder of the cycle. Each cycle is only 5 weeks, and you can go through this multiple times a year. We recommend going through it multiple times a year in order to get the most benefits. It's an objective way to measure your strength and to measure what you're doing. It goes really well with a proper nutritious diet, and also goes really well with other types of training. This is a supplemental tool that you can do in conjunction with other ways that you are training in order to make sure that you are continuing to get stronger. And it only works better if you have the right nutrition in you. So keep listening to the podcast. You're going to hear us talk a lot more about how important strength is. But again, the Vulcan Hatch cycle is a very viable option for you to start working on objectively measuring your strength gains.
Absolutely. And composition is so what you're made of based, like, right? So like muscle requires more energy than fat. Fat doesn't require energy as far as I know to sustain fat.
Correct.
But if you have
very, very, very little.
Yeah. So the higher the muscle mass you have, the more you're able, I guess the more energy your body needs to function. So the more calories you're going to naturally, your BMR is going to be a lot higher.
Yep.
So you take someone who's 180 pounds, but they're 10% body fat versus someone who's 180 pounds and they're 25% body fat. The BMR difference there is going to be massive.
Yeah, muscle's expensive. That's what we say. It's just expensive to keep it functioning and moving. So that is why BMR with someone who has more muscle mass is significantly elevated.
So your clients that you're seeing, and all of a sudden they start to see a little bit of a change. It's a positive feedback loop. The better that they do, the faster, well, not the faster, but the better their body starts to go into the direction they want it to. That's really encouraging, because I mean, I think there is that state. I mean, I remember with myself where you were working on this and just felt like I was hitting my head against the wall, and then all of a sudden, boom, like the lights turned on, and like within like a 2 or 3 week span, things changed drastically. It was really interesting. Do you see that a lot? Does that happen a lot?
Yeah, sometimes I think, because my demographic, and we might get into this later, is females in midlife. So I feel like that transition process, just the results, the physical results don't happen near as quick, but energy levels change a ton with the right fueling. So that's what I'm seeing a lot of is the lights are coming on in terms of, I just got off a client call earlier this morning, and she said, at 2 p.m. every single day, I thought there's no way I can make it through the rest of my workday. She goes, I haven't thought that since we started working together.
Let's go.
Which awesome. To me is an awesome, I want to help people get to their desired body composition.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I try to tell people it is not all about what you look like. I get it. I want to look a certain way. I know it feels good to put on clothes and you feel confident. I get it. But if you can do everything you want to do, if you can go do your strength training workouts, if you can play with your kids and grandkids, if you can get through your workday and feel awesome, if you can go out on a vacation and go hiking, if you can do all of those things and you're fueling your body properly, but you have an extra 5 pounds because that allows you to have ice cream on Saturday, that is worth it. That is worth it. So
I love it.
Trying to get people to understand that.
Okay. I'm going to give you some rapid fire. Flip the hat on backwards.
Oh, it's getting real.
Geena, carnivore diet. Go. Pros and cons.
I don't know if I have any pros, to be honest.
The protein?
Pros, high in protein. Let me say this. Out of every single diet, this is the one that I would say there's actual data to support that it is not good for your health.
Wow.
In terms of cholesterol, they have studies that have shown like people dying at very, very young ages because their triglycerides and their cholesterol are so high, because you have to think you're only eating protein.
Yeah.
Some of them introduce some fruit and honey and things like that, but you're only eating protein, which a lot of times there's no restrictions on it. So higher in saturated fat increases all of the triglycerides and leads to really, really bad heart health.
Yes. That's my same opinion. Anecdotally, there has been some really interesting folks who have undergone the carnivore diet and have some tremendous results from a health perspective. Like Jordan Peterson's wife, or I think it's Tammy. She had terrible health issues, went to a carnivore diet, and all of a sudden she's feeling a lot better. Same thing with Matt Fradd's wife. I think her name's Kimberly. No, it's not Kimberly. I can't remember. But same thing with her. Tremendous health issues. And she went on carnivore diet, got better. I have some friends who had some mold in their house and got very sick from the mold, went on the carnivore diet and got a ton better. What do you think is happening? This is entirely theoretical. I have an opinion too, but what do you think is happening?
I think it's the protein content.
Yeah.
I mean, we know people are severely under eating protein.
Yeah.
So if you have a diet that legit, the base of it is protein, you're going to have a good effect from, it's not that protein's bad. It's that there are other benefits from food groups. Like, I know carnivores think vegetables are like the devil essentially, and you should never eat it. But the protein that you're eating with a carnivore diet, I mean, that's still, it's not like it's negated because you're not eating other foods. You're still going to see a positive effect of that. And they're just like keto can be really good for epileptics. Like, there might be a specific subset of people that have a certain condition where the carnivore diet is helpful, but from what I have seen for the average person, increase your protein intake. Yes, that is helpful, but do it in a way that allows you to eat other foods also.
I think that's what I was thinking too. I know if a lot of our older adults, when we have somebody for PT, we ask everybody, what's your nutrition look like? And a lot of these people are eating a handful of nuts in the morning and maybe a piece of yogurt in the afternoon, and that's it. So doing anything that's going to increase your caloric intake is pretty much going to be good for you at that point.
Yes.
So half the time I'm wondering if that's it, because you do hear these stories that people have great health results from it. Probably not the body comp, what they're looking for, but the health results. And you mentioned the keto diet. Do you think that's because of their NEAT decreasing with a lot of the epileptics who they go on the keto and also they're not fidgeting as much and maybe it decreases? I don't know. What do you think is happening there?
Specifically with epileptics, just the diet in general?
Let's do this. So tell me your opinion on the keto diet. Okay. So let's just start there and then maybe touch on the epileptics a little bit. What do you think is happening at the scientific level?
Okay. I think keto can work for some people.
Okay.
So I'm not the person that's going to bash every single diet. I know I just did the carnivore diet, but that was really the only one that I had like super negative things to say about it. But in terms of like weight loss, because most people are going to pick out a diet for weight loss purposes.
Yeah.
Generally speaking. The process of losing weight, like we talked about, is being in a calorie deficit. Now, I like to think about this in 3 buckets where you can have it. They're all restriction, right? You either have to restrict calories. So calorie restriction is the first bucket. Time restriction is the second bucket, which would be like intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
The third bucket would be a macronutrient restriction, which would be keto, right? You're limiting your carbohydrate content.
So to tell people what keto is real quick too.
So keto is essentially minimizing all forms of carbohydrates. There's actually different facets of keto, but for the most part, it's like under 30 grams of carbs per day, which if you know how many 30 grams of carbs is, it's really nothing. It's nothing. And a lot of times those carbs can be in other foods you're eating. So you have to be very careful because essentially you're trying to use the ketone bodies that you produce as almost in place of carbs. And so some people love this because that form of restriction feels the easiest for them. So they don't really like carbs. Maybe they're not super active in terms of high intensity activity. And so they feel really good on this diet. If that is you, go for it. I think it's going to be a very specific population of people because as we know, carbs fuel our activity. So if you do high intensity activity or weightlifting, chances are keto is probably not going to feel really good.
It's too power based.
Yeah, because you're just not going to have that quick energy like you need.
But if you're a runner,
if you're a long distance runner, it could be something where, hey, you feel awesome on this. And so I always tell people to choose one of those 3 buckets that feels the least restrictive.
Interesting.
Because what you have to do to lose the weight is what you have to do to maintain that weight loss. So if you're picking the thing that feels like you have a lot of resistance to make it happen, chances are you're not going to be successful.
Yeah.
And so you have to pick the one that feels like it gives you the best. I always say you want structure and flexibility. So what gives you the most structure in your day-to-day, but is still flexible enough to make it work when maybe that framework has to shift a little bit?
I'm going to push back a little bit on you, mainly because I want to hear how you respond to this.
Yeah.
What do you say? Because, and I think research indicates this with the keto diet, is the brain fog aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have someone who wants to do keto and they're doing it, how do you try to get around the brain fog aspect? Or is keto still a viable option if someone is having brain fog like that?
So I've heard, and this is again anecdotal.
Yeah.
A few people have had brain fog and had to almost push past it for a couple of weeks to have that clarity that other people have. Because there's two buckets. There's people that are like, I have keto flu, my brain's not functioning, I feel terrible.
Yeah.
That would be me. I haven't even tried it, but I just know that'd be me because I love carbs. And then there's the other group of people that get past the initial symptoms, because you're going to have symptoms to get to a place of like really a lot of clarity, like mentally speaking. Yes.
Wow.
And they said they have felt more productive than they ever have. So
that's cool.
It is cool. But it's not for everyone. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where that's why I'm not going to say, oh, everyone needs to do keto or no one needs to do it. And I also don't necessarily ever go in recommending a specific diet, fad diet to anyone, because I need to hear what they're doing, what is sustainable for them. Mm-hmm. And carbs they're not a necessity. Protein is. Mm-hmm. Fats are for hormone regulation. Carbs and fiber, they're actually not necessary to function. Wow. But does that mean it's optimal? Right? Yeah. Probably not, right? We want fiber in our diet. If you're an active person, carbs are definitely helpful, but it's not, your brain can function off ketones, which, yes, it's preferred energy source is glucose, but once you get past the initial symptoms of feeling wonky from no glucose, you can actually have quite good brain fun. Function.
It's fun looking at the energy systems and seeing how that works. So like, if you're a long distance runner, there is a point where your body can become more efficient at using not the ketones, I guess, but using the output from the oxidative system and using using lactate as a fuel source.
Yeah.
So I almost think it's similar on that regard. Like we're flipping how the body's supposed to work to break down fat and the ketone. I'm not even sure fully what a ketone is. What is a ketone?
Yeah, exactly. It's a byproduct of a fatty acid. Yeah. So essentially you're using that as your main substrate for your fuel.
Yeah.
Which, we already use fuel for energy. If we're like Sean and I right now, we're sitting here, we're not using glucose to fuel our bodies. Exactly. We're using fat.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where, like I said, if you're super active, you're not going to feel great because fats take a much longer time to break down. Mm-hmm. So the process of making ATP from glucose is, if you're using the phosphocreatine system, instantaneous.
Absolutely.
Instant. If you're using the glycolytic system, it's still fast, right? Those are still short burst activities.
Compared to the lactate threshold of the ketone, yeah.
Yeah, but beta oxidation is a long process. Now, when you picture the process in your head, you're like, oh, that must take hours. It still happens relatively quickly, but it's not instant. Like, you can make ATP in one step with the phosphocreatine system. Beta oxidation is one step of breaking down a fat. So there's actually 4 different steps. And so it is just a longer process, which doesn't make it good or bad. It's just what happens.
That's what I was going to say. If you look at those chains, the energy cycles and how they go, like the one of breaking down beta oxidation is so long compared to just the normal like glycolytic system, which is interesting. But it kind of makes you wonder what's going on there and if you're in a ketonic state, like it's got to have some type of maybe not damage, or maybe that's the point. You're just burning more calories to go through that system. I don't know. It's interesting. But what do you think about on the epileptic and that side of things? Why do you think that's helping them?
Honestly, I haven't dove into the epilepsy side of things. It's definitely something with the wiring in the brain. It has to be. And so I don't know if there's like a disruption with glucose in the brain utilizing that for epilepsy.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, and I know it does help. So I know these diets can be really great for specific populations, but the mechanisms for epilepsy, I have no clue.
Probably no one knows.
But but if it works, it works. That's the thing. And that's why I say, like with the keto diet, if it feels good for you to restrict a certain macronutrient because you want to lose, like fat loss is your main goal, then I would say go ahead and do it.
Gotcha.
More power to you. But for me, it's the calorie restriction seems most appealing because you can pull from different buckets if you need to.
Okay. Being a strict vegan.
You can make it work. It's hard. Protein it's key for muscle health and longevity. Vital. And we know that muscle is really our organ of longevity. We've seen this in studies. The people who have more muscle mass tend to have better lifespans, are more capable and independent.
Yep.
And so if you're not consuming animal proteins, it's going to be very difficult to meet a protein requirement that gets you that ideal muscle mass. Not impossible, right? There's definitely things that you can add into your day. And I think a plant-forward diet is helpful, but when you completely eliminate meats, it makes it really hard. So you're going to have to do some supplementation with vitamin B12, vitamin D, iron. A lot of those, people think about meat as just protein, but there are so many vitamins and minerals in meat that are essential for life that you're missing out on if that's completely removed. And so, yes, you can do it. I mean, there's vegan protein powders, there's vegan yogurts, there's all these things that can help you. It's just harder. So would I recommend it? Like, oh, we should all go vegan? No. If you're going vegan for health purposes, stop. If you're vegan for environmental purposes and animal cruelty things, okay. You know what I mean? Like, but if it's truly for health reasons, I don't think you're justified.
It's the right option.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What about intermittent fasting? And I want to follow that up with asking you about fasting. And like some people, like more than just intermittent fasting, you know, people like, okay, I've eaten really bad this week. I'm just not going to eat anything for the next 2 days. But first start with traditional intermittent fasting.
Yeah. I think the research is more and more compelling for implementing this, especially during perimenopause, menopause, honestly. But I don't like to think about it as intermittent fasting. It's just, again, semantics. I like to think about it as circadian fasting. So you're more eating with your circadian rhythm rather than specific intermittent fasting. Yeah. So really, we do know that if you wake up and eat, like the first thing you do in the morning is like toast a bagel. That's not really how we grew up. Like, our ancestors just didn't have the availability to like wake up and eat. They had to go kind of get their food in, right?
Yeah.
So we do know that waiting about an hour to eat can be helpful. In that first meal of the day, I don't want to get so bogged down with logistics, but we know your first meal of the day needs to be high protein. So whether that's at 8 a.m. or 10 a.m. or 12 p.m., your muscles are primed. You're coming off a fasted state where you've slept for 8 hours. You haven't eaten anything. And so your muscles are primed for protein intake. And so if you're going to prioritize a meal, I think society has flipped it and said, dinner, dinner, dinner. This needs to be the biggest meal of the day.
Yeah.
I would scream breakfast, breakfast, breakfast. Make this the biggest meal of the day because your muscles need that protein, right? You're essentially in a catabolic state during a fast, right? You're in a state of breakdown. So if our goal is to maintain or build muscle mass, protein is the key, especially at that first meal.
That is cool. And I want to ask so many questions off that, but I'm not going to. But that is, we could do a whole podcast on that. That's fascinating. Okay, so what about someone who does that hardcore fast? Like, okay, I've eaten terrible, and there's fat. I want to get this. There's good reasons to fast. Like, there's incredible spiritual reasons to fast. Like the Bible tells us, you shall fast. You should fast. So there's a whole thing there, and you can chalk it up sometimes to, okay, I'm going to do this for suffering purposes, which is fine. But from a health perspective, performance perspective, I've eaten like crap all week, so I'm just going to not eat anything on Saturday and Sunday. Then on Monday I'll start over. What do you say to that?
I would say that's a disordered mindset in terms of eating. If you view food like, I can't control myself around it, I overeat, and then I'm just not going to eat the next couple of days, I don't think you understand the role of food and how it is supposed to fuel you. I get wanting to restrict. Maybe you feel guilty, maybe you feel gross, but I would encourage people to change their mindset around that. In terms of, okay, you've had a really bad day. It's the weekend. You overdid it. Maybe you want to just like completely not eat because you feel so. I would say the reasons you're doing that would be like guilt and shame, right? That's why you're not eating.
Yeah, exactly.
And so to come from a place of like, I'm hesitant to say this, you know, like the self-love initiative, that's not what I'm saying. But you're coming from a place of self-hate. Yeah. If you're saying, I'm not eating the next 2 days. I hate what I did. I feel gross. I'm shameful. And so if we always approach fitness and nutrition as, I kind of hate the way I look, I hate the way I feel, I'm just going to do this, that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So you want to come from a place of, I cherish my body. Like, I know this is a gift. I want to steward it well. I'm eating to fuel my body. I'm working out because I know I will feel the best. I'm doing this for longevity. I'm doing this for when I'm 50.
Mm-hmm.
That is where we want to come from. Not, oh, I ate a donut yesterday. I'm feeling fluffy. So now I need to go work out.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like when you can shift your mindset from I'm doing this out of self-hate to I do this because I respect myself and I want to live a healthy life,
Yeah.
it flips the script.
That's good. I like that. One other diet I want to ask about, and there's probably a ton other, but the paleo diet.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on paleo?
I think it can be really good. It really, the roots of the paleo diet were to eat how our ancestors ate. So meat, seeds, nuts, fruit. Again, is this sustainable in our normal food environment, which is, as we know, very processed, lots of packaged items? It's hard. I mean, realistically, it's hard. I like thinking about the paleo diet as this is how we should eat the majority of the time, in terms of we should be eating mostly whole foods, things that come from trees, grow from the ground. But I also know there's a place for treats. So this is where I don't tell people to ever restrict certain foods, because again, when you tell someone not to have something, it's like you're a little kid. You just want it more and more and more, and it eats at you. And eventually you can't say no.
Yeah.
I mean, it comes down to that perception where people think, you know, I have really good self-control. And I'm like, I just don't keep it around. If I had to walk by a bin of ice cream in my freezer 20 times, on time 20, I would be eating it. I just don't buy it.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing where people just restrict. Then at some point they're going to just overdo it. So with the paleo diet, I would say, can we do this the majority of the time? But can you add in some foods that you like, that maybe you don't think necessarily like, oh, this is so healthy, but I enjoy this. And eventually this is what helps with consistency. So remember in the beginning, I was like, consistency is the main thing we're missing. If eating a brownie on the weekends helps you stay consistent for 20 years, I'm going to say eat a brownie on the weekends, you know, because ideally that is the goal, to do this forever. And so if whatever you're approaching, whether it's paleo, Whole30, all these super restrictive diets, if that doesn't seem sustainable forever, I tend to say, well, let's not do that. Maybe let's use some of the principles, but then apply it to your life in a way that you can do.
That's good. I like that. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up, and I'm gonna put you on the spot. Okay, because when you talk to someone who knows a ton about a topic, you've got to like give them a window to do something. So I'm gonna time it.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you 30 seconds. So we've talked about all these different diets. We've talked about nutrition. I want to give you 30 seconds to tell me what fueling the body appropriately looks like. Because that is really when you have a client, you're asking, okay, how can I fuel you appropriately to achieve what you want to do in life?
Yeah.
Okay. So you got a general layout. I'm gonna give you 30 seconds starting now.
Okay. Step 1 is having protein at every single meal. So this should be what you center your meal around. So step 1, figure out your protein source at an adequate amount. Step 2, add in a fiber source. So this could be in whole grain, fruit, vegetable, something that has fiber in it. Step 3, add in some type of leafy green, whether that's broccoli, asparagus, anything like that to fill up the rest of your plate. And then fat is accounted for with your meat or your cooking oil.
With 2 seconds to spare. That was great.
Thanks.
Oh, that was awesome. That was good. Geena, you are excellent. We're going to talk about some other stuff on some other podcasts too. Guys, if you have any questions for Geena, I'm going to put her contact stuff in the email or in the description. If you haven't, please like and subscribe. I don't know what it does, but I know it's good. So please do that. But Geena is just a wealth of knowledge, and you can shoot her a message, ask her anything, and she'll be able to help you. So Geena, thank you so much for doing this.
Of course.
It's been good. Awesome.